And beginning the pre-trip test, what the first thing the driver examiner is going to have you do is get up into the truck and perform a safe start. To do that, you make sure that the truck is in neutral, make sure that the parking brake is engaged, put your foot on the brake, and go ahead and start the truck up. Once you've started the truck up, the first thing you need to do is make sure that you put your seat belt on, and be sure to check that the seat belt is operating properly. In doing that, you'll take the seat belt, be sure that it latches properly and securely, also checking to make sure that there's no rips or tears within the seat belt material itself. The next thing you're going to want to do is you're going to take and turn the fob, take the fob and turn the alarm off for the fob here in the truck. Then take and check your windows and your mirrors, making sure that they are clean and clear. There's no cracks, there's no illegal stickers, anything obstructing your view. You also check to make sure that your mirrors are adjusted properly. And then you're going to look at your gauges. You're going to check your gauges one at a time. First of all, checking the temperature gauge, making sure that it's rising within 170 and 200 degrees. The next thing you have is your two air gauges for your two air tanks. They're going to be both needing to be around 120 psi. The next one is you're going to check your DEF fluid, making sure that it's at an adequate level. We like to keep it above half full. The next thing is you're going to check your voltmeter. On this particular truck, your voltmeter is a digital read right in the center of the dashboard here. Make sure that it's at around 14 volts. Also, you're going to check your oil pressure. Your oil pump is mechanical, so your oil pressure gauge will fluctuate as you accelerate the truck, but it should be somewhere between 20 and 40 psi on your oil pressure gauge. The next thing you're going to check is to make sure that all of your components here on your steering column are operating properly. You have your turn signal, making sure that your indicators within the cab come on when you use your turn signal. You have your left turn signal, you have your right turn signal. You also have your windshield wipers, making sure that they're working properly. Be sure to check to be sure that your windshield wiper fluid is coming out and working properly as well. You have adequate windshield wiper fluid. The next thing you'll check is to make sure that your high beams come on when you manipulate the turn signal switch there for the high beams. Then you're going to check to be sure that your horn is working properly. The next thing you're going to be checking for is that your heat and your defrost are working properly. So what you'll do is you'll first of all, turn the defrost on. Feel up here to make sure that it is in fact blowing out. Then you're going to switch it to the floor for the heat and make sure that your heat is blowing out on the floor. The next thing that you'll check for is your emergency equipment. You're going to look to see that you have 3 emergency triangles on this particular truck. They sit on the floor in a red box behind the passenger seat. You're also going to be checking for a fully charged fire extinguisher. In this truck, it's mounted down next to the door on the driver's side, right under the driver's seat. Fully charged fire extinguisher. You're also going to be checking to have spare fuses. Those are located in a pocket over here on the driver's side door. On this truck, we also have a wheel chock, that's located down behind the driver's seat. The next thing that you're going to be doing is you're going to be checking the functions of the brakes, both the parking brake and the service brake, which is your foot brake. In order to check that the parking brake is functioning properly, what you'll do is you'll put the truck down from neutral into drive. You'll give the truck a bit of gas, accelerate the truck so that you are attempting to creep forward and making sure that the parking brake does in fact hold the truck still. Put the truck back into neutral, disengage the parking brake, creep forward just a little bit, and make sure that the service brake will in fact stop the truck. Put the truck back into neutral, re-engage the parking brake. The last thing that you're going to want to do in the cab itself for the pre-trip test is for the pre-trip inspection, is you're going to tell the examiner that you're now going to perform the air brake test. The air brake test is composed of 5 elements. Number 1, you must be sure that both of your air tanks, the gauges, are registering at a 120 psi. After you've seen that, step number 2 is you turn the truck off and then you turn the key back on into the auxiliary position. This causes your dash to all light up. You would be able to turn your radio on. You turn the key back into the auxiliary position. Step number 3, you disengage the parking brake. You'll hear a whooshing type sound. Once that dies down, you tell the examiner you're checking the gauges, the air tank gauges, to be sure that they do not drop more than 2 psi in 1 minute. The next step, this is step number 4, you're going to hold down the foot brake. Not fan it, not move it, just hold it down as hard as you can. And what you're doing is you're checking to be sure that at this time, both of the air tanks do not drop more than 3 psi a minute. The last step, step number 5, you're going to fan the brake, meaning pumping it, and tell the examiner as it drops around 60, an alarm and a light will come on, and when it drops between 20 and 40, the parking brake will then re-engage. Once that parking brake is re-engaged, your air brake test has been completed. So, just to review, there are 5 steps. First step, check to make sure that both of the air tanks are reading 120 psi. Step number 2, you turn the key off, turn the truck off, turn it back to the auxiliary position. You don't start it back up, you just turn it to the auxiliary where all the dash lights up. Step 3, you disengage the parking brake. After that whooshing sound is done, you tell the examiner, I'm checking to be sure that the needles don't drop more than 2 psi a minute. Then step number 4, you hold the pedal down. A lot of guys forget step 4. Hold the pedal down. Don't pump it, just hold it. You tell the examiner, I'm watching to be sure that it doesn't drop more than 3 psi a minute. Then step 5, you take and you begin to pump the brake, or fan it, whatever you want to call it, and you tell the examiner, now remember, don't wait for it to happen. Before it happens, tell the examiner, I'm looking for, as the needle drops to 60, an alarm and a light will come on, and then as it drops below between 20 and 40, the parking brake will re-engage. That is complete. Every guy that has done exactly what I've instructed has passed the air brake test with flying colors. It's not as complicated and as scary as some people make it. It's only 5 steps. Now what you'll do is you'll come around to the truck, make sure that you've turned your headlights on, and you'll begin at the front of the truck. What you're looking for is to be sure, first of all, that all of your lights are working properly, that they're the proper color, that none of them are cracked or broken or blown out. For example, you have your clearance lights, you have 2 of them at the top of the box on each side, and you have 5 clearance lights at the top of the cab. You're checking to make sure they're all the proper amber color. The next thing that you're going to check for is your headlights, making sure both the left and the right one are working properly. Also checking to be sure that your high beams and low beams are operating properly. And then also you're checking to be sure that your right and left turn signals are both the proper amber color and that they are operating properly, not cracked or broken. You're also checking to be sure that your windshield doesn't have any visible cracks or illegal stickers or anything that would obstruct your view. While you're in the front, you also will check underneath for any leaks or spills, anything that would indicate anything that was leaking from the truck. Then you're going to come over on the passenger side. Open up the hood itself. You're going to begin on the passenger side. There are 4 things that you're going to be looking for and checking on the passenger side. The first thing that you're going to be looking for is the alternator itself. You're going to be checking to make sure that it's secure, making sure that it's not cracked or loose. Also, you're going to be checking for any wires going to it. It is an electrical component, so there won't be any hoses, but you're going to be looking to make sure that none of the wires are cracked or loose. The second thing you're going to be looking for is way down here in the middle. What I'm touching with this pointer stick is the water pump. You're going to be checking to make sure that it is tight, it's not loose or cracked or leaking. You're also checking to be sure of whether or not it's gear or belt driven. On this truck it is belt driven. The important factor on that is because you're going to be then checking the belt to make sure that it's not torn or ripped or frayed in any way. The third thing that you're going to be looking for is the belt itself. You're going to be checking to make sure that it doesn't have more than 3/4 inch play. It can't have any more than 3/4 inch play. Also, you're looking for any cracks or frays or The fourth thing that you're going to be checking is the hoses. You've got here the coolant hose, making sure that it's not got any bulges or cracks, that it's not leaking in any way, and any other hoses that you might see on this side, making sure that none of them are cracked or leaking. You'll see that you don't see any visible leaks. So that's 4 things that you're going to be looking for: the alternator, the water pump, the belt, and the hoses on this side. Then you're going to head over onto the driver's side. Now you're over on the driver's side, and you're going to begin by inspecting the air compressor. The air compressor is right down in here, and it's on this particular truck it's red, and you have a copper line that comes off of that, the air line, and what you're checking for is to make sure that it's secure, that there's no audible signs of air leaking. Also, you're wanting to be sure that it is in fact gear driven, so that you're not looking for any type of belt. On the front of that, mounted on the front of that down in there, there is another component. This is your power steering pump. On this particular truck it's kind of dirty, but it is normally a gray color or a silver color. And once again, you're checking to be sure that it is secure, that it's not cracked or broken, that there's no visible signs of leaks of power steering fluid. Also, it is gear driven as well, so there's no need to look for a belt. Coming off of that, you're going to be checking your coolant, making sure that it is at the proper level between add and full. Also, you're going to be checking your oil, making sure that it is at the proper level on the indicator on the dipstick. The next thing that you're going to be looking at is your steering linkage. You're going to begin up here with the steering column linkage, making sure that it's secure, that your universal joint is secure. You also have your steering box, making sure that it is secure. All the bolts are tight, that none of the hoses going to the steering box from this power steering fluid are loose in any way. The next thing you're going to be looking at is your power steering fluid reservoir. You're checking to make sure on this here, it will be probably kind of dirty, so you might need to wipe it off, but you have your indicator lines right here. You're checking to be sure that it is at the proper level. The next thing that you're going to be checking for is your continue with your steering linkage. This here is your pitman arm, making sure that it's secure, none of the bolts are loose. You have a castle nut at the bottom here, making sure that it's tight. Also, that the cotter pin on the castle nut is in place. This here is your drag link. Just think about it as being the linkage that drags behind the pitman arm. This is your drag link, making sure it's secure. And then down in here, you have this part here is called your steering arm. You're making sure it's secure. There's a castle nut on that, making sure that it's tight and that the cotter pin is in place on that. The last piece is your, way down in here, this bar. This is called your tie rod. You're making sure that it's secure and that there's nothing loose or cracked about it. The next thing we're going to be going for is the suspension. First of all, you have your suspension mount. This is this piece right here. There's bolts. You're making sure that all of them are tight, that it's secure, nothing's cracked or broken. Then you've got your leaf springs. Your leaf springs, you're looking for any of them to be missing, cracked, loose. Also, you're checking to be sure there's no scissoring with the leaf springs. That's where the leaves would kind of go opposite of each other. The next thing you're looking for on the suspension is your U-bolts back here, making sure that they're tight, they're in place, and none of them are cracked or broken or loose. Also, you're going to be checking for your shock absorber, making sure that it's tight and it's not cracked or broken or leaking any fluid. The next thing you're going to be getting into is your brakes. One of the first things you'll check with your brakes is you're going to be checking your brake line, making sure that it's not cracked or loose, and that there is no audible signs of leaking. Don't say, I'm looking for any leakage, fluid leakage, because there is none with the brake line on an air brake truck. You'll hear an audible sign of any air leaking from the brake line. The next thing is your brake chamber. This is this big round piece right here. Basically what you're looking for is that it's secure, that there's no visible signs of damage, and that it's not loose in any way. The next thing is your slack adjuster. This is this piece right here. This is your slack adjuster. You're checking to be sure that all the pins are in place, that the cotter pin is in place, and nothing's loose or broken. And then on the slack adjuster, with the air brake, with the parking brake set, you're not going to be able to pull it out more than 1 inch. This is very important when testing this, to be sure that you don't pull it out. You can't pull it out more than 1 inch. Also, you're checking to be sure that that push rod that floats freely, and it doesn't have a bend in it, or it's not broken in any way. The next thing that you're looking for is down inside here, you've got your brake drum. That's basically the mechanics of how that operates within the wheel. The brake operates within the wheel. You're checking to make sure there's no more than any 1/2 inch cracks within the brake drum itself. Also, you're checking the brake lining. It can't have anything less than 1/4 of an inch wear on the brake lining. While you're down inside the wheel, you're going to check the rim, making sure there's no cracks, bends, or illegal welds within the rim itself. You're also checking the inside of the tire, making sure there's no bulges, abrasions, or any cracks within the inside of the tire wall. Then coming out to the top of the tire, you're making sure that there is no uneven wear on the tread itself. You're also going to be checking to make sure that you have at least 4 30-seconds tread. There has to be at least 4 to 30 seconds tread on the front tire. Then on the outside, just like the inside, you're checking to make sure that the sidewall doesn't have any abrasions, bulges, or cracks within the outside tire wall. You're also checking to make sure that the rim doesn't on the outside have any bends or cracks or any illegal welds. You're also going to be checking your lug nuts, making sure that they're secure. There's no rust streaks that would indicate a loose lug nut. Also that there's no shiny threads indicating a cross thread lug nut. Within the front, you've got the hub seal. You're checking to make sure there's fluid, there's hydraulic fluid inside of this. You're making sure that there is nothing leaking, that all the bolts are tight within the hub seal. You're also going to be checking the tire. You tell the examiner, I would check the tire pressure with either a gauge or a mallet. As you continue down the side of the truck, one of the things you're going to check for is to make sure that your mirrors are mounted properly, that there's no cracks or anything obstructing your view when it comes to your mirrors, making sure that your side window is secure, making sure there's no cracks or no illegal stickers, nothing obstructing your view. You're going to make sure your door latches work properly, both on the inside and on the outside. You're going to make sure that the door itself, the hinges are working properly, that there's no slack in them. You're going to make sure that there's a rubber seal on the inside of the door here. You're going to make sure that it's intact, that there's no rips or tears within that rubber seal on the inside of the door. The next thing you're going to do is you're going to check your fuel tank, making sure that it's not leaking anything from the bottom, making sure that the saddle straps are secure on the fuel tank. You're going to check to make sure that your steps, or some call it the catwalk, are secure, that they can hold your weight. You're going to make sure that your fuel cap is on tight, that it's not leaking, making sure that any of the components on the top of the fuel tank are intact, none of them are leaking or broken. The next thing you're going to come to is your DEF tank. You're going to make sure that the cap is secure on that, making sure that all the electrical components are secure, none of them are cracked or broken on that. Also making sure that there's no leaks coming from underneath your DEF tank. The next thing you've got here is your battery box. You do not have to take the lid off of that. Just basically make sure that it's secure and that there's no visible signs of damage around the battery box. The next thing is going to be your air tanks. You've got 2 air tanks on this particular truck. You're going to make sure that they're secure. It does have saddle straps holding them up. You're also going to make sure that the air lines coming from it are secure, as well as the shutoff valves. There's one on the front of one and one on the back of the other one. You're going to make sure that there's no damage to the airlines, also that there's no audible signs of air leaking from the airlines. As you come back through the truck here, you're going to want to make sure that, for one thing, you're checking to make sure that all your marker lights are working properly, that there's the proper amber color, except for your back one, it's going to be a red color. Also making sure that all of your reflectors are intact and none of them are broken or missing. You're also going to be checking underneath, being sure that your exhaust is secure, making sure there's no visible signs of carbon leaks around your exhaust. You're also going to be checking your drive shaft, making sure it's secure, making sure that any of the universal joints, there's several coming down through the drive shaft, that they're secure, that none of them are loose or broken in any way. Also, you're going to be checking your frame, making sure there's no cracks, bends, or illegal welds. You also have bolts here that are holding the box onto the frame, making sure that they're all secure, none of them are loose. Continue on back, you're going to come to where the rear suspension and rear wheels and all of that are. A lot of it's going to be very similar to what you dealt with in the front. You're checking to make sure that your suspension mounts here are secure, the bolts are all secure, making sure that your leafs on your leaf springs are secure, none of them are cracked or broken or missing, there's no scissoring as we mentioned before. You're also going to be checking just at your brake chamber in the back here. You're going to be checking to make sure that it's not damaged, cracked, or broken in any way. You also have the brake line coming into the brake chamber. You're going to be making sure that it's not cracked or damaged, that the line is not having any audible signs of air leakage. You won't have to, for the sake of the exam, get way down inside of there. A lot of what the examiner wants is just your awareness of what you're looking for. And what you're going to tell him is that you're down in here looking for the U-joint or U-bolts for the suspension, making sure that they're secure, none of them are cracked or broken. You're also checking for the inside of the tire where the brakes are, checking the brake drum, making sure that it doesn't have anything more than a ½ inch crack. Also, the brake lining cannot have anything less than a ¼ inch wear on the brake lining. You're going to check the insides of your 2 tires to make sure there's no cracks, bulges, or abrasions. You're going to check the outside as far as the top of the tire where the tread's at, making sure that it has on the back at least 2 32 inch tread on the back. On the front, you were looking for 4 32 tread. On the back, you're looking for 2 32 inch tread. You're also going to be checking to make sure that there's no obstruction between the dual wheels. You're also going to be checking the rims to make sure that there's no cracks, bends, or illegal welds on the insides of the rims, as well as on the outside of the rim. When you come to the back wheel itself, you're going to be checking, as I mentioned, the rim itself to make sure there's no cracks, bends, or illegal welds. You're also going to be checking the lug nuts to make sure that they are tight, that there's no rust streaks indicating loose lug nuts, also no shiny threads indicating cross-threading of the lug nuts. On the back, you have the axle seal. On the front, we had the hub seal. On the back, there's the axle seal. You're making sure that there's no leaking going on around the axle seal. You're also checking to make sure that all of the nuts on the axle seal are tight. Also, you're going to mention that you would once again check the air pressure on these tires with a gauge or a mallet. You're also, as you come back, going to be checking for the rear portion of the suspension mount, making sure that it's secure and making sure that there's no cracks or breaks on that, as well as checking to be sure that your mud flap is in place. Without a mud flap, you would be shut down on the highway. You're checking to make sure that your mud flap is in place as well. As you come around to the back, you're going to be checking first of all for your lights in the back, making sure all of them are there working properly, that they're the proper color, none of them are burnt out, cracked, or broken. You're going to check first of all, you've got 5 clearance lights on the top. They're all supposed to be red in color, and you're checking to be sure they're all working properly, not cracked or broken. You also have your tail lights, which also work as your blinker lights as far as your left and right blinker light. They also work as your four-way as far as your hazard lights. You're checking to make sure that they are the proper red color. There's one on the left and there's one on the right. You're making sure that they're both on, working properly. Then also you have your license plate, making sure that it's secured properly and intact. You're checking to make sure that the license plate light is working properly. You want to make sure to check that your door is latched properly, that it's secure, not going to fly open while you're riding down the road. You're also checking the bumper, that's making sure that it's secure, that it will hold your weight. You're also checking to be sure that your door on your ramp is secure, that it's not going to fly open and have your ramp fall out as well. As you finish that, what you're going to tell the examiner is, I'm going to go up and get into the truck and turn the truck on and manipulate these back lights. Would you be able to tell me that each one of them are working? I'll call them out to you. Then you'll get into the truck. You will turn the truck on. It must be running, because otherwise your reverse lights will not come on. Turn the truck on. And then, because of course the truck's running, just go ahead and leave the door open so that the examiner can hear you. And then you'll take and you'll manipulate your left turn signal, and you'll holler out left turn signal. You'll manipulate the right turn signal, holler out right turn signal, the brake lights. You'll also be putting the truck in reverse and hollering out reverse lights. Once that's completed, you will be finished with your pre-trip test.